All right, the Fat Frequency Quantum, part 2 of my sort of planar Christmas special. Let's bring it over here. And there we go. So these are the Fat Frequency Quantum single planar. Probably the only thing in like the mid-range planar market, and probably more than one should pay for this kind of planar, but certainly not like, oh, hold on, my thing is messed up. Certainly not the 64 audio solo level of expense. So there is that. But this is not the cable it comes with. I sold that because I didn't like it very much. It's the Effect Audio Aries S2, which I think just kind of drove the cost up on this a little more than it needed to. But as you can see here, where is my, there we go. That's where my focus is best. This is Quantum with the infamous Superstage modules, although I did spend a lot of time with the control module and the power module, the blue and black ones respectively. And I actually, they have their charms. They're not total throwaway items like some reviews kind of insinuate, whereas these are definitely the secret sauce sound, the setup. But yeah, there's merit in the other ones for sure. I have my set of Quantum on a Yonsei cable that I got on sale recently, and I think it fits the character and aesthetics of Quantum just a little bit better than Aries S2, although that was quite a good quality cable. Just not really my favorite aesthetic with these. So here we are. This is how I've been using them. I'm not a big cables changing sound much guy. If this did change the sound, I didn't really pick it up much, so bear that in mind. These are funky looking. They're very industrial. Some people say they look like Beats or whatever. Looks aside, they do have a little bit of something special for them, and that's why I sort of consider them the ghost of planar present, right? And if we're going with my A Christmas Carol metaphor of Timeless 2 being the ghost of planar past, this is the ghost of planar present, and then the Wu Zetian legend, I believe, is the ghost of planar future, but we'll get to there eventually. Sort of been lagging making videos, but anyway, pen on liqueur tips is what I have on here. What it's going to come with, aside from that nice cable, is not that much. You get a metal puck the same as Timeless 2 did. Probably from the same OEM or whatever, but you get your cleaning tool, full set of TRI Clarion tips. These are the control module. Nice blue guy here. And the black ones are the power module, I believe is what they're called. They're just a bit of a base shelf on what the control module does, but we'll talk about that in the graph section. So you can see here, branded. I'm not a carrying case, really, more of a storage case, I suppose. And that's pretty much it. I do have the original box floating around somewhere, but it's about the same size as the puck. It's not very much of anything, so it's not really relevant. Anyway, back to Quantum. These are really something, man. Let's go over to the graph. So I did graph all 3 modules with an assortment of tips. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to leave it with the Clarion graph, although I did spend a lot of time with the Type E tip, so if we were to change that over, you get some subtle differences in treble presentation, but didn't hear too much of it. I mean, it might have smoothed things out a little bit to switch to something like a final Type E tip, but what they intend for you to use is the Tri-Clarion style wide bore kind of thing, silicone. Anyways, so the sound signatures here are going to be they're all going to be a little bit much for most people, I think. This, as you can see, it's just the absolute god of air. There is a ton of 15K, like way more than maybe anyone ever wanted, needs, or asks for, which sort of creates this very like sharp, airy, technical sound that is definitely fatiguing under some circumstances, but I think you let your brain burn in a little bit, suck on a little copium, you kind of miss having this much air and definition to music when you switch to something else from Quantum. So there is something to be said about letting yourself get used to the sharpness of the sound, and then really locking in and picking out details that you probably were unable to hear because they weren't boosted to all hell. It can be kind of fun, but as you can see, the control module, the blue one, has a sort of balanced sound up until about the upper treble. It's kind of actually tame for a planar in this area here of the ear gain. You can see my like rudimentary target that I've been working on sort of follows the shape, although I like a little bit more warmth in the mids and maybe pull down 1K a little bit like the Super Stage module does. I think that sort of creates a bit more separation and can make things a little bit more defined, separated on the stage, but it does come at the cost of some organicness, in my opinion. But at the very least, so control module, right? That's, I think some people have called it like the more vocal focused module. I don't know that that's exactly true, although the vocals do come across pretty sharp and incisive with that one in. Even without the bass shelf of the power module and the super stage module, it's still quite a bit of bass, right? Like it comes above my target in the sub bass, and my target's already pretty bassy. So there is something to be said about that. This thing's all about impact and technicalities. It's massively U-shaped, as you can tell by huge treble and big bass. And then, this is actually pretty, between 80 and like 6K, this is pretty tame, right? If this was on like a whatever single DD 2BA set, it'd probably sound pretty normal. But the magic in this thing is all at the ends of the spectrum. So an extremist set, if you will. That being said, how did I feel about the control module, the blue one? I thought it had nice bass texture, even though it's not really as intense as the super stage module or the power module. Maybe feels a little more balanced, at least for my preferences, but less visceral, less physical and weighty for sure. Yeah, more forward vocals, but maybe more natural than the other two in a way, but I don't know. You turn the volume knob up on any of these, right? With more gain, you're just gonna get way more air, and it's just gonna become way too sharp. So, Initially, I used these a lot with EQ. Played around a lot with EQ and needed it for longer listening sessions. Yeah, I mean, cymbal crashes, especially female vocal harmonics, string slides, things like that, that normally aren't boosted because they're pretty high frequency. They're going to stick out like a sore thumb with this. So detail heads are going to get every little thing out of music that you can, but yeah, it's almost like a musical microscope, really, with any of these modules. Just the amount of resolution you get from all that air is really something to be said, right? And super stage module compared to the control module, obviously things sound a bit more spaced out and wider, and I think in terms of general imaging and presentation, does about the same job. It's still just the single planar driver. It's this 1K dip that I think creates that separation on the stage and kind of widens things up a little bit. But the rest of the response up until about 80 hertz and down is kind of the same, and most of the lower to upper, like the treble region in general, is about the same on any of these modules. So what you're really going to be changing here is the upper mids, right? With the power module, the sort of really incisive, sharp sound of the control module gets alleviated a little bit. It's a tiny bit more of a generalist with the power module. That extra bass shelf, I think, helps balance out all that crazy air and can make things a little bit less fatiguing. But I think for the most part, I would stick to the super stage or use EQ on the control module. That's what I spent most of my time doing. Without EQ, it's probably super stage first. Actually, I like the control module for what it does sometimes. I think without EQ, I might have spent more time listening to the control module, but not the case recently. I've had this thing for a few months now. With the power module, let me see, what else did I think about that? Yeah, I mean, the bass might have lost a little bit of texture when you get this big sub bass boost here. The mid bass could get a little bit more masked out by all of the sub bass that you're getting. Like, this will continue to extend past 20 a little bit, even though you're not gonna hear too much of that, but you might feel it. Yeah, either way, sharp and incisive. The cymbal presentation, messier with the power module. I don't know what it is. I think maybe the sub bass boost and whatever is going on in the air is just creating sort of more shimmery washiness on cymbals. So instrumental focused music is going to be a little bit more difficult on the power module. Yeah, it could be more versatile, is what I wrote here, without EQ, in terms of like that extra bass is going to keep things kind of fun, especially on pop kind of tracks where bass can kind of carry the whole vibe. But all that air and the vocal harmonics that get accentuated from that can be kind of brutal. Just bear that in mind. Down to super stage module, top of my list here is it's the most satisfying planar sound that I've heard from IEMs, and I think that that's still true, right? Timeless 2, what I still think is something special, and I enjoyed Les Sure's S08. I've heard S12 and 15. They didn't really move me too much. In terms of other planars, I'm not sure. I might have heard another planar at CanJam, but it's not coming to me at the moment. yeah, like Super Stage is going to be the most sort of enveloping, like immersive kind of sound. With Quantum, you're still going to get all that crazy separation and air. So, breathy vocals, really high pitched background noise, and if you're listening to things like vinyl rips where all of that background fuzz and air can come through, this is going to bring that basically to the forefront. Like, you're going to know if your music was recorded in a room with a lot of air getting into the mics, like without being processed out, right? Handles metal well. Yeah, I mean, it falls apart less in terms of like really fast bass drum hits and snare hits like that than something like Timeless 2 did for me. Yeah, that fast planar quickness to creating sound, I think, definitely helps. But between this and Timeless 2, I think the driver is either the exact same or basically the same. So it's that dip in 1K and a little bit more the peak of the ear gain probably that is helping create like better separation with double bass and really fast snare drum, stuff like that. Yeah, without EQ, it's not necessarily a one trick pony, but it definitely does favor more instrumental music where every little detail that comes out isn't going to be too crazy. But if you a lot of vocal forward stuff where there's a lot of breathy femaleness, high pitched screaming or whatever, it can throw off pretty crazy harmonics that are just going to get boosted by all that 15K, and you're gonna hear it. It's gonna create some prickliness. Is that audiophile enough? Yeah, I wrote here in my notes: smoother the reproduction, the better the replay. Right. So, if you're listening to really well produced stuff, they're de-essing things, they're processing out excess air from the microphone when they record vocals or instruments, what have you. Things are going to sound pretty good, right? But the less well produced your music is, the more you're going to know about it, and it's probably going to sound worse because you're going to think, oh my god, these vocals are sharp and unlistenable, and I'm just hearing way too much of everything else and not the music, which is sort of the consequence of chasing every little detail, right? In the way that planars do best, in my opinion. There's definite trade-offs, right? That's why really dark sets and really warm, smooth sets are so popular, because they're more quote-unquote musical, whereas this is definitely something that's like, I think JTIS and others would probably call it audiophile tuned. Like, you got to be looking for this kind of sound. It's not for everybody, certainly. I enjoy it. It's probably, what's been on my desk the most the past month. Which recently I got a hold of the binary Dynaquattro, and that's, as of the past couple days, sort of taken this thing's throne. But it's still definitely something I reach for and want to hear when I really want to pick apart my music. So that being said, let me go back to the screen real quick. Do I want to compare it to anything? I mean, this thing is sort of unlike anything else, right? I mean, if we throw it up against Legend and Timeless 2, just to make this easier, let's hide. Let's just go Super Stage only for the moment. You can see, right, like this definitely either the same driver or, very similar. Timeless 2 is kind of like gonna be the most balanced, I feel, whereas Legend, because of that lesser bass shelf and like wider range of upper frequency stuff that you're going to get, it can come off really airy as well, and you're going to get that kind of detail that this thing can produce, but not the fun. Certainly not the fun. The bass is the star of the show when you have that much air and need to balance it, and this mid-range dip is all the rage for accentuating the extremes of the music, right? Like dipping out 1K is just gonna, by extension, bring up everything else in a way that I think sort of cuts your music in half. Not really, but it can feel like it on some tracks, where without this dip, things sound a lot more coherent and unified, and doing a dip like this really brings things apart and lets detail kind of seep through, in my opinion at least, or to my ear, I should say. As you can see, we got the planar extension here from the upper mids on. It's just like a series of mountains. Looks like a mountain range or something, but yeah, nothing else really compares to this thing. Like, it's doing its own thing, man, and that's why I haven't sold it. A lot of sets have come and gone from my possession, and this thing I'm gonna just hold on to, probably, unless there's like a Quantum 2 that comes out that, you know, carries the spirit on in a certain way or what have you. But yeah, this is one of my favorite sets, even though it's definitely not my favorite for all situations. So it is something special. To me, it represents the peak of like the first 2 or 3 generations of planar IEM. Like, this is the top of that mountain. And then now we're seeing microplanars and hybrid IEMs like Dunu's new stuff, Quinner's Daybreak. There's a couple of IEMs that have come out where you got a planar driver and a dynamic. I think hybrid planar IEMs are going to be even more of the rage. Just, you know, cost-wise, they're less expensive than ESTs. No one is asking where microplanar drivers are coming from, whereas with ESTs and BAs, you know, I'm personally in the camp where if it's not a Knowles or a Sonian and you're not going to tell me what it is, I probably won't buy like the IEM. Or at least like I'm going to be more motivated to buy an IEM if they're transparent about what kind of drivers are in it, right? And unfortunately, you can't really have that kind of transparency with microplanar drivers, and even the planar drivers that are in everything from the cheap KZ stuff all the way up to the, I think there's a boutique brand that has a planar that's $2,000 or $3,000 or something, and it's probably the same driver. So anyway, driver brand rant over. These are special, and I think they should be respected as such, even though the execution is a little weird. The cable it comes with was completely not necessary. I think this could have been a $400 easy win for FatFreq had they not collaborated with Effect Audio and drove the cost of this thing up to like $800-900, I think, at the start. I got this thing for less than that. Shouts out to eBay. But yeah, that's basically going to do it for what I think about Quantum here. And you know what? Most of the time I think it looks pretty ugly, but right now I think it's got a cool like sci-fi look to it. Anyway, the ghosts of Planar present. All right, I'll see you in the next one for I think I have it here with me. I'll show it real quick. Zetian Wu, the legend, the overlooked. I think the dark horse of the planar game. Dual planar driver on a nice Yonsei cable here. I'll talk about her later. All right. I'll link to the graphs. If you want to talk to me, leave a comment, hit me up on Instagram. But that's going to do it. Peace.